The world is watching the wrong space race. While rockets and missions to Mars capture the headlines, the foundation for significant long-term capital growth is being established in the invisible infrastructure connecting Earth to orbit. A significant shift in global investment strategies isn't about who gets there first, but who owns the roads everyone else will travel on. The terminal cursor blinked on a blank field, waiting. Sophia Mitchell ignored it. Her attention was captured by the data streams fluorescing across her central monitor, a stark juxtaposition of centuries. On the left, a digitized ledger from the Union Pacific Railroad, circa 1875. Its columns tracked capital expenditure on steel rails, timber ties, and blasting powder. On the right, a financial model of the early commercial backbone of the Internet, a landscape of fiber-optic cables and server farms from the 1990s. One was a world of iron and steam, the other of silicon and light. Yet, in her analysis, they were fundamentally the same organism. Her reality was a constant search for these historical echoes, the deep structures of economic transformation that others, fixated on the present, always missed. Today, her focus was on a single elusive metric, the ratio of wealth generated by the network itself versus the wealth generated by the commerce it enabled. The answer wasn't in the sky, it was buried in the past. She isolated the ROI curves. The 19th century railroad barons didn't profit from selling corn or lumber. They profited from the unavoidable toll paid by every farmer and lumberjack who needed to move their goods. The return on investment wasn't in the cargo, it was in the control of the rails. A century later, the pattern repeated. The first internet billionaires weren't the ones selling books or CDs online. They were the ones who owned the digital pipes, the connectivity infrastructure that made every single one of those transactions possible. The data indicated a strong and consistent trend. In both cases, the foundational layer captured a disproportionately massive share of the new value. This was the core of her thesis, a framework connecting the great wealth shifts of history. She had already mapped the data for shipping lanes and electrical grids, but the parallel between iron rails and fiber optics was the most potent. The pattern functioned as a foundational axiom of civilizational growth. The entity that builds the bridge to a new frontier dictates the economic terms for everyone who crosses it. A conflict raged in the numbers on her screen. The raw inputs were chaotic: land grants, spectrum auctions, public subsidies, and corporate bankruptcies. Yet, when filtered through the correct models, the data converged into a highly correlated analytical signal. The final graph materialized, two starkly divergent lines climbing across a temporal axis. One, labeled network operators, soared exponentially. The other, network users, grew steadily but was forever dwarfed by the first. The foundation was set. Now, she could look toward Earth orbit. She minimized the historical graphs. The iron and silicon echoes of the past receded, replaced by a silent, swirling hologram of the present. A three-dimensional projection of Earth hung in the center of her desk, latticed with thousands of gossamer-thin orbital tracks. Each thread of light was a satellite, a real-time telemetry feed painting its path through the void. It was beautiful, but to Sophia Mitchell, it was also a mess, a chaotic swarm of ambition that obscured the real structure taking shape. A young analyst, Kenji Tanaka, approached her workstation, holding a tablet displaying a news feed. "Did you see the latest launch? Their new imaging constellation is promising sub-meter resolution. The market's reacting." Sophia didn't look at his tablet. Her gaze remained fixed on the hologram. "They're selling photographs, Kenji. Very expensive, very detailed photographs." She gestured at the projection, her hand passing through the glowing model of the planet. "We're not in the business of selling photographs." He seemed confused. "But their data monetization potential is huge. Agriculture, maritime insurance, defense." "It is," she conceded, her voice even. "But they are just one more business using the new roads. Look closer." With a few gestures, she filtered the display. Individual satellites faded into a pale gray. In their place, new lines began to glow. Inter-satellite laser links, planned orbital refueling stations, ground-based uplink networks, and the projected flight paths of in-space logistics vehicles. The chaotic swarm resolved into a coherent architecture, a grid being built over the planet. This, she said, her tone taking on a new weight, is the emerging space infrastructure layer. It's not the satellites, it's the system that will connect, service, and control all of them. Kenji stared at the transformed hologram. The individual points of light were now just nodes in a much larger, more fundamental network. He saw constellations that couldn't function without a shared ground network, imaging platforms that would one day depend on orbital servicing tugs, and deep space missions that would be impossible without propellant depots in low Earth orbit. These were the choke points, the intersections, the toll booths. The real value isn't in what any single company does up there, Sophia continued. It's in the systems they will all eventually depend on. Think about it this way. It is like owning the bridge rather than the cargo crossing it. The analogy hung in the air between them. The conflict in Kenji's understanding visibly resolved, the conventional wisdom he'd brought to her desk collapsing under the weight of the new perspective. His focus on the cargo had blinded him to the far greater value of the bridge. He nodded slowly, no longer looking at the newsfeed on his tablet, but at the glowing architecture Sophia had revealed. The chaos was gone, replaced by the cold, clear schematic of a new economic reality being born. Kenji returned later, his earlier confusion replaced by a focused intensity. I've been running the numbers on your bridge analogy. The model holds. But it leads to the obvious question. If we're not betting on the cargo, who is building the bridge? Sophia nodded, a faint smile on her lips. The intellectual exercise was over. The practical application was beginning. With a series of precise gestures, she cleared the holographic display of Earth. In its place, a chaotic nebula of corporate logos and state agency emblems swirled into view. The market sees this, she said, indicating the entire swirling mass, as a single ecosystem. It's a critical error in judgment. They are not all playing the same game. Her hands moved through the hologram, sorting logos into distinct columns. The first column quickly filled with the most recognizable names in the industry, the launch providers. This is where the public's focus is centered, she explained. They provide the access. They are absolutely essential, but in the long run, their service becomes a commodity. The historical parallel is a railroad company that only runs the trains but doesn't own the track. She paused. Investing in them is a bet on a specific fleet of vehicles. Our thesis is different. It is like earning from roads instead of the cars driving on them. She then began populating a second, much smaller column. The logos were obscure, representing companies that manufactured high-throughput laser communication arrays, autonomous rendezvous and docking systems, and standardized satellite chassis. These were the component builders, the architects of the interoperable systems that would form the backbone of the orbital economy. They didn't launch anything themselves. They built the pieces that everything else would depend on. But this, she continued, is still only the second layer. Her fingers traced a nearly invisible line, creating a third column, populated by only a handful of highly specialized entities. These were firms working on orbital power beaming technology, universal data protocols, and the very first designs for orbital debris mitigation networks. They were not building products for the current market, but creating the fundamental conditions for future markets to exist at all. This is the deepest level of the infrastructure, she said, her voice dropping slightly. These actors aren't just paving the orbital roads, they're inventing pavement. They are laying the groundwork for industries we can't even imagine yet. It is like building the electrical grid before the appliances exist. The holographic cloud was gone. In its place stood three stark, clearly defined columns. The initial analytical chaos had resolved into a clear, actionable investment hierarchy. Kenji looked from the small, third column back to Sophia. He now understood that the true wealth shift wouldn't come from the spectacular fire of a rocket launch, but from the silent, standardized click of a universal docking port connecting in orbit. The boardroom was silent. the only light emanating from the massive screen behind Sophia Mitchell. She stood at a minimalist lectern, her posture calm, her voice a steady instrument of pure analysis. The faces before her, a committee of senior partners, were unreadable. Current long-range projections suggest that by 2050, the orbital economy will not be an extension of terrestrial industry, but a distinct macroeconomic sphere, she began. The screen shifted, displaying a cascade of exponential curves. We project the emergence of entirely new markets: in-space manufacturing, asteroid resource processing, and orbital energy generation. Projections suggest these markets could reach a multi-trillion-dollar scale. Sophia let the scale of the opportunity settle for a moment. However, our thesis does not recommend direct investment in these frontier industries. They will be the cargo, the high-risk, high-failure rate ventures of this new gold rush. The most defensible and ultimately most profitable position is in the foundational layer that enables them all. The screen went dark for a second before a new title appeared in simple white text. "Predicting the future is a fraught exercise," she stated, her voice cutting through the residual excitement. "The risks inherent in this venture are commensurate with the projected returns." A bulleted list materialized: technological uncertainty, capital solvency horizon, geopolitical destabilization, Kessler Cascade scenarios. We are talking about deploying assets with 30-year operational lifespans into one of the most challenging environments for sustained infrastructure, she elaborated. A single solar flare could disrupt power networks. A piece of untracked debris could initiate a chain reaction that renders entire orbital bands unusable. International treaties governing orbital space are fragile at best. The capital required will be immense, and the direct ROI may not be realized for decades. Many of the companies we invest in will fail. The room grew colder, the trillion-dollar dream now anchored by the heavy weight of reality. "This brings us back to the core question," she said, her eyes sweeping across the committee. "Who benefits most when a new frontier becomes accessible?" She did not wait for an answer. History has demonstrated, from Roman roads to the internet, that it is rarely the first explorer or the most daring prospector. The durable fortunes are built by those who control the pathways, the protocols, and the power grids. Her final click brought up the last slide. "The future may not belong to those who reach space first. It may belong to those who build what everyone else depends on." Sophia Mitchell looked out at the faces in the dim light. The presentation was over. The data had spoken. The calculated multi-trillion-dollar gamble on the architecture of tomorrow now lay on the table, a question mark hanging in the silent, expectant air. Sophia's analysis forces us to look beyond the spectacle, beyond the fire and ambition of the rocket launch. It reminds us that the most profound changes aren't always loud. Sometimes they are as quiet as a line of code or a financial model that redraws the map of power. The race that truly matters is rarely the one being televised, but the invisible one to control the very roads that lead to the future. If this shift in perspective is what you come for, make sure you're subscribed to TECH DISSECT Official for more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. Sophia's analysis was based on a calculated historical pattern, but the outcome has immense ethical implications for humanity. Do you believe it's right for private companies to own the foundational infrastructure that all of our future in space will depend on? Or should that power be a public trust? Thank you for joining us on this journey. We'll see you in the next dissection. Join us next time as we explore what happens when one of these critical infrastructure layers doesn't just create wealth, but becomes the first target in a strategic competition in the orbital domain.